Hi, friends. Welcome back to Teaching in Room 9, our region's largest classroom. My name is Julia. I'm one of the second grade teachers at the Soulard School. And here for Teaching in Room 9, this time around, my lessons focus on phonemic awareness, those small unit of sounds that letters make. Welcome back, friends. I'm so glad that you were able to take time out of your day to be here together with me. And I'm really excited for us to jump right in and do some learning and reading here together. All right, so just to kind of review for your brains, things that we've talked about so far here together. We focused on print awareness, understanding that concept of word. What is a word? And also talking about those different parts of a book. Then we started focusing on vowels. And we know that vowels are the letters A, E, I, O, and U. And we specifically started focusing on the short vowel sounds. And then last week, we started talking about some of those long vowel sounds. And as you can see in my chart here, we're going to be focusing on that more together this week. Last time, we focused on how the magic E helps us to hear that long vowel sound. You can see in my chart here, it says how magic E makes the first vowel say its name. And in a word, you'll see that vowel, a consonant in between, and then magic E on the end. And magic E is super sneaky because it's silent. So we can see it, but we can't hear it. And it tells this vowel to say its name. We also talked about how sometimes a vowel will come in the beginning of a word and it'll have its own syllable. We'll talk about that more in just a second. And then lastly, we also focused on those Y twins and understanding that Y will come at the end of a word. And if it's a one-syllable word like fly, my, try, it will have that long I sound. If it comes at the end of a two-syllable word, it'll have a long E sound. We'll practice that more here as well. So our lesson objective or goal for today is I can know my long vowel sounds. I can understand vowel teams. So again, as you know, friends, we talked a little bit about last week, and you can see already in some of these examples found in my chart here that vowels or letter teams will come together to make a long vowel sound. And we're going to practice all of those different letter teams here together today. Again, looking at our magic E chart, that is also going to be included in this chart here. So we'll practice that again. But just as a refresher for our brains, it is the E on the end. It's super sneaky and silent. And it says for these vowels to say their long vowel sound. And again, a long vowel sound is when the letter says its name. Let's practice here. So before our magic E, we had tap, tap. Magic E comes in, and now instead of A, our vowel says A, tape. Before it was cub, and now it's cube. Peat, tube, kite, and robe. We also learned a song last week as well. It's to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Magic E, the end of a word is where I'll be. I don't say eh or E, I just sit there silently. But the vowel that I'm around gets to make their long, long sound. Yay, nicely done. So that little song helps us to remember our magic E and how the magic E works. So now we're going to start looking at some of these other letter combinations that come together to make these long vowel sounds. So looking at this chart here, it again has all of the different ways that we can make each long vowel sound where the letter will say its name. Here you can see this is an angel, and it is A, the long A sound. Anytime you see a little line above it that is flat and straight like a little dash, that means it's the long A sound. And this word here is angel. Angel. A syllable is the beats in a word. And we're able to figure out how we divvy up or divide up those different syllables based on the talking vowel. Can you do that with me, friends? Talking vowel. So over here with those magic E words, it's not a talking vowel. The E is a silent vowel. So we have one talking vowel in these words here. So they're only one syllable. Bake, tape, cube, kite. Over here, the letter A is a long vowel sound and it gets its very own syllable. Angel, angel. And we'll practice some of those different examples too, because this happens for each of the different vowels where you have a long vowel sound in the beginning of a word and it has its own syllable. Let's keep going. Here you can see this is our magic E example, cake. And you can see a picture of a cake here. Silent E on the end tells this vowel to say its name. How many syllables in cake? Yes, you're right. Because of the silent E, there's only one talking vowel, cake, cake. Now, what if I take the k in the beginning of cake? K, ache, k, ache. Can you do that with me? K, ache. Now, take that beginning hard C sound, that k, ache, and turn it into a O. What new word do we have? Nicely done. Lake, ache, lake. Nice job. And we can tell also that's a rhyming word because they have the same ending sounds. Now take that beginning sound in k, ache, that beginning k, hard C sound, and turn it into What new word do we have? I heard a friend say make, ache. Another rhyming word for cake. Nicely done. You guys are doing amazing. Let's keep going. I see some of our first examples of those vowel teams. Vowel teams. All right, now we get to do one of my very favorite things. It's called mirrors on. So when I say mirrors on, you are going to repeat everything that I say and do until I say mirrors off. Do you think you can do this with me at home? All right, let's try it, friends. Mirrors on. Vowel teams are two or more letters that come together to make a long vowel sound. A-I, A-Y, A. A-I, paint, A-Y, ray. Mirrors off. Nicely done, friends. So we are focusing on A-I, like in the word paint. Another example of a word with A-I is rain. And then we see A-Y. A-Y also says A, like in a ray of sun, or in the word day, or play. What's another word that rhymes with these words that I was just saying? Play, day, ray. Shout it out nice and loud for me, friends. Yeah, I heard a friend say, say. Good job. What are some other ones? Tray. Good job. There's a lot of different ones that end in that AY sound that have that long A sound. Nicely done, friends. Then you can see here These are some less common examples, but they still say the A, long A sound. So we see this word here, EI, can sometimes come together to say A, like in reindeer. You can see our reindeer here. Reindeer. You hear that A. Or like what a horse says, neigh. You hear that EI. Also like a reindeer might help to guide a sleigh. These are all examples of that EI that come together to make the long A. They're just not quite as common as our AI and our AY. Let's keep going. EY, sometimes we'll say A. You can see my hand waving here. It's saying, hey. Another example is the word they. These have the EY sound that say A. Now, this might be a little bit tricky for your brain, so I want to make sure that you're really paying attention. You can see my word here, EA, but I'm seeing something that's right underneath it. What do you notice about these two here? Yes, they're the same letter combinations. EA, EA. But it gets tricky, friends, because this EA says that long A sound. A, like in steak. And you see that here? Or the word great. They have that EA sound. This EA says the long E sound. We'll get to that one here in a second. You're doing such a nice job. So we've done our A. This is our sign language for the letter A, our long A sounds. There's so many different ways we can make the long A sound. Let's move on to E. This is our sign language for E. Long E, again, the same as our angel here example, where it starts in the beginning of a word and it has its own syllable and it makes that long E sound. Here you can see the number 11, 11, 11. You've got talking E, talking E, talking E. So it's a 3-syllable word. Do it with me, friends. 11, 11. Also, if you're talking another number word, like if we're talking about even or odd, even also has that E, long E in the beginning, where it has its own syllable. Even, even. Then we have our magic E, E, consonant. Magic E on the end here. You see the word Pete. Steve is another name example. Here, like come over here. Those are all long E, consonant, magic E. Now, we get to do mirrors on again, because these here, these two, are some of our really common ones. We've got EE, like in sheep. EA, usually, not always, because we see it here. Sometimes there's an exception, but usually EA says that long E sound. All right, we're gonna do mirrors on again. Are you ready? Mirrors on. Vowel teams are two or more letters that come together to make a long vowel sound. E, E-A, E, E-E, C, E-A, speak. Mirrors off. Nicely done. So you can see E-E, sheep, tree, C, B. I'm coming up with some good rhyming words. Do you see how tree, C, they have those same ending sounds? Or like a bzz, B, B-E-E. And then you also have E-A, like in leaf. Or meat, like steak is a type of meat. It's spelled with that E-A. Nicely done, friends. Let's look at some of our less common examples here. I-E, like in shield. I-E, like in piece, like I would like the last piece of pie. E-Y, E-Y, like in key and monkey. Now here we see that first example of our Y twin. This one here, our cute little baby. Baby, Y comes on the end and it's 2-syllable words. Let's practice that. Baby, happy, silly, creepy, funny. Good job. So every time it's those 2 syllables, those 2 beats, and Y comes on the end, it's gonna make that long E sound. All right, then again, now we're back to where that vowel comes in the beginning and it has its own syllable. Island, island. And then we have our magic E. I, consonant, magic E. Like in hive, like a beehive. Okay, let's practice with hive. What if we took, here's our H, huh, huh. Can you do that with me? Huh. I, v, huh. I, v. Now, what if I take away that huh and I add in a blend, dr. So now I have that dr, I, v. What word do I have? Blend it together. Drive, nicely done. All right, now we get to the 2 common ones that we see here. IGH says I, and IE also says I. This is our sign language for I. All right, so we're gonna do mirrors on. Are you ready? Mirrors on. Vowel teams are 2 or more letters that come together to make a long vowel sound. IGH, IE, I, IGH, night, IE, pie. Mirrors off. Nicely done, friends. So again, here's another example. We have IE usually says that long I sound. Like in here is 1 die. Dice is when you have 2. Die is when you just have 1. So die, lie, are examples of that IE. So that's what it usually says. But unfortunately, here's another example where we have IE that actually says that long E sound. Words certainly are tricky. That's why we're practicing them here together. And then here is our next Y twin, where Y comes on the end and it has that long I sound, but only when it's a 1-syllable word. Fly, like here. Try, my, cry, dry. These are all examples of that long I sound. All right, come down here to our O. You are doing such a good job. Here's our example of where O, sign language for O, comes in the beginning of a word and has its own syllable. This is the shape oval, oval. 2 talking vowels, oval. Then we have our magic E. O, consonant, magic E on the end, like in home. Nicely done. Then now here's our common ones. So there's 2 or 3 that we're gonna focus on. O-E, like in toe, or like a doe, is a female deer, is one example. But the 2 that are a little bit more common than that is O-A, like in coat, and O-W, like in snow. We're gonna practice with our mirrors on. Ready? Mirrors on. Vowel teams are 2 or more letters that come together to make a long vowel sound. O-A, O-W, O, O-A, boat, O-W, snow. Mirrors off. Nicely done. So some examples of that O-W. Snow, throw, blow. Now we're gonna go on to our U. Here is our example. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit so you can see better. Our U with our very own syllable in the beginning. You can see here, what is this a picture of, friends? Yes, it's a unicorn. U comes in the beginning of the word and it has its own syllable. Unicorn. We've got 1, 2, 3 talking vowels. So we have 3 syllables. Unicorn. Another example is the word uniform. Like a person who plays professional sports is going to wear a uniform, or a police officer will wear a uniform. Also, another example is a unicycle. That one had 4. Unicycle is a bike with only 1 wheel. All right, then we've got our magic U, like in cube, similar to our example over here on our magic E chart. And then UI, like in fruit or suit. This one is not quite as common as some of these other ones, but you will see it, and it does still make that long U. This is our U for sign language. So UI will make that long U sound, and then you see UE makes that U sound, like in glue, or the color blue. And then you see here EW, like a brew, like a witch's brew. Also the word through, drew, blue bubbles, EW. So that UE and EW are really good examples of that long U sound. All right, are you ready? We're gonna do mirrors on again. Mirrors on. Vowel teams are 2 or more letters that come together to make a long vowel sound. UE, EW, U, UE, glue, EW, brew. Mirrors off. Nicely done, friends. All right, we're almost to the end here now. We've got 2 different examples of O-O. These are sign language for O-O. They make 2 different sounds. You have O-O makes that ooh sound, like in spoon, zoo, moon. Makes that O-O ooh sound, just like R-U-E, R-E-W, R-U-I, and our magic U, magic EU. And then we also have O-O says kind of almost like a short U, like in book and took, look. So one more mirrors on, friends. Are you ready? Mirrors on. O-O. Ew. Ooh, spoon, book. Mirrors off. We did a short one on that one. All right, friends. So I'd like us to try to practice some of these skills here together. I have a few clip cards for us to go ahead and try some of these vowel teams out. All right, so I'm gonna hold up a card and we're gonna look at what vowel team or letter teams that come together to make these vowel sounds. All right, so I'm gonna start with this one here. You can see our picture here. Is it A-I? We've got our first letter here, B, and it ends in a A-I says A, B-ain. Is that right? I don't think so. O-A says O, B-own. Not quite. And then EA says that long E sound, B-E-N, B-E-N, bean. Nicely done. All right, next. We see our beginning blend, tr. O-E says O, tro? I don't think so. A-Y says A. So does A-I. But I don't think that A-I seems quite right. So we can figure out that tray with that A-Y is the right word here. Nicely done, friends. What about this one here? Look at this cute little cat. And we can see the kitten is sleeping by the Z's and clearly having a dream about fish. So we see the blend, dr, and we see the last letter makes the So drome, not quite. Dream, dream. You hear that long E sound, dream, dream. Very nice. All right. What about this word here? You see it starts with a S. Oh, why? We're going to practice that next week. Says oi, soy. That's a word, but it doesn't really match our picture here. Again, AI probably wouldn't be on the end of a word. So this word is say, and it's that AY there at the top. Say. What about this one here? We can see our picture. We can see it starts with a S and ends with a P. EI often says E. And OA says that long O, S, ope. Because we know EA says E and seep isn't quite right because it doesn't match our picture here. All right, last one, friends. We see an example here. See our picture. We see it starts with a T and ends with a F. Now, is it OA? OA says O, toth? I don't think so. OE also says O, like in toe. Toth, again, that doesn't sound right. O can be like tooth, or ooh, like in tooth. So TOOTH is the word tooth. Nicely done, friends. You did amazing. And we practiced so many different ways that letters or vowel teams come together to make that long vowel sound. And we'll continue practicing some of these even more. You did amazing, friends. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Teaching in Room 9 is made possible with support of Bank of America, Dana Brown Charitable Trust, Emerson, and viewers like you.